Commodore's house in Cowes, the final home of Cowes' most famous designer, Arthur Fox, fittingly had a gorgeous varnished Flying 15 sitting on its quay this weekend as the class celebrated its Diamond Jubilee alongside its Southern Area Championship. It's incredible to think, but Arthur designed the Flying 15, the first planing keelboat, in 1947, and that 60 years later there's 4,000 of them racing all over the world. Over the years, the class has evolved through modern materials and equipment, but older boats can still compete thanks to the class's system of classic, silver and open fleets according to the boat's age. So, 60 years on, the graceful Flying 15 is still capable of thrilling performance, as sailors this weekend can confirm. The bank holiday weekend provided a mix of conditions, including no wind and too much wind. But Sunday delivered choppy seas and winds up to 20 knots for the Diamond Jubilee race. 62 Flying 15s came to the Royal Yacht Squadron line for the Jubilee race around the Cans in the central Solent. A running start in the brisk breeze and a strong flood tide soon swept the boats east towards the first mark of Mackley construction. At the first mark, it was Roger Palmer and Bev Moss in Safina who had escaped the pack and were leading by a country mile from Gavin Tappenden and Bob Preston in flux, with Ian Cadwallader and Dave Sweet sailing Murphy in third. Behind the leaders, the pack arrived en masse, then set off on the beat against the tide to South Ryde Middle. Safina led around the second mark with its large lead intact. Second was Adrian Tattersall and Tim Smart in Daz, with Barry and Sue Parkin in third. Flux had dropped to fourth. From South Ryde Middle, the course took the fleet across the tide on a shy spinnaker reach to North Ryde Middle. Again it was Safina leading, and behind her the next three were unchanged. Next came a beat to Sunsail, where Safina led around, with Flux improving from fourth to second, while Mike Hart and Tim Hull in Gecko Blaster had climbed through the fleet to claim third place. From Sunsail, the course took the fleet on a long spinnaker reach north to Fastnet Insurance. It was on this leg that Safina made her first mistake, heading towards the wrong mark, which allowed Flux to narrow the gap and put pressure on the leader. By the penultimate mark at Arway Yachtmaster, after a strong wind fetch in choppy seas, Safina and Flux had been caught by Gecko Blaster, which secured the windward berth for the final beat to the finish off Hill Head. At the line, it was Mike Hart and Tim Hull in Gecko Blaster who took the gun. Astern it was a close run thing, between Roger Palmer and Bev Moss and Safina, and Gavin Tappenden and Bob Preston in Flux. Flux approached on starboard, with Safina on port. Safina had to duck Flux's transom, but was still able to lay the buoy end of the line. Flux tacked on top of Safina, and both boats charged for the line. They crossed, overlapped, but Safina just took the gun, with Flux claiming third. The Southern Area Championship saw a contrast of conditions. On Saturday, racing was abandoned through lack of wind, so after the Jubilee race, the race team from the Cowes Corinthian Yacht Club ran 3 races to make up for lost time. The sailors must have been knackered at the end of the day, but they had a chance to recover on Monday, when racing was again abandoned, this time due to strong winds. So the championship was decided on 3 races, with Steve Gocher and Phil Evans taking the title, ahead of Jubilee race winner Mike Hart and Tim Hull in Gecko Blaster, with Jeremy Davey and Richard Rigg in third. The Flying 15 action now moves to Mallorca for their World Championship in a month's time, and we wish all the British sailors a great regatta.